Okay, day 23. We are so close to the day of Christmas. And our scripture today is Matthew chapter 2, verses 1 and 2. Now, when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem, saying, Where is he that is born the King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east, and are come to worship him. With wondering all the wise men saw the star in heaven springing, and with delight in peaceful night they heard the angels singing, Hosanna, Hosanna, Hosanna to his name. By light of star they traveled far to seek the lowly manger, a humble bed wherein was laid the wondrous little stranger. Hosanna, Hosanna, Hosanna to his name. And still is found the world around the old and hallowed story, and still is sung in every tongue the angel's song of glory. Hosanna, Hosanna, Hosanna to his name. The heavenly star its rays afar on every land is throwing, and shall not cease till holy peace in all the earth is growing. Hosanna, Hosanna, Hosanna to his name. Someone Missing at the Manger by Elizabeth Starr Hill. It was 2 days before Christmas. Marcy was troubled. She sat on the floor in the glowing fan of warmth from the fire, a dozen books stacked by her, and flipped through one until she came to a manger scene. In the picture, shepherds had come to visit the baby Jesus. The kings were off in the distance, but plainly on the way. Even a cow and a donkey stood nearby in the stable. It was just as she had thought. Marcy shut the book with a snap and picked up another. The manger scene in this one was a bit different. The kings were kneeling in front of the crib. A boy goat herd stood behind them. A couple of cherubs hovered over the shepherds, but except for some animals, there was no one else. Marcy looked through every Christmas book she owned. She found tall and short shepherds, fat and thin kings, black sheep, white lambs, boys with crutches and crooks, one dressed as a choir boy. But in each story, someone was missing from the manger. No little girl, not one. Marcy went into the kitchen where her mother was feeding Kevin, her baby brother. Mom, when the baby Jesus was born, how come no little girl went to the stable to see him? Her mother spooned some mashed potato carefully into Kevin's mouth and smiled at Marcy. Are you sure no one did? Have you ever seen a picture of a little girl at the manger? Marcy demanded. Well, I guess not, unless you count angels. Some of them look as though they might be little girls. You can't count angels. They're too angelic. I just mean plain, ordinary girls like me. I never thought of it before, but you're right. It's odd. Marcy's older brother, Todd, came bursting in, bringing a rush of cold air with him. I'm starving, he announced, seizing an apple from a bowl and crunching into it. I'll start lunch. Marcy, will you finish feeding Kevin? And this afternoon, her mother said, you and I must finish up the pageant costumes. Marcy beamed, thrilled by the reminder of how soon the pageant was. She'd been looking forward to it for days and days. In fact, for a year, because she had been sick with a bad cold last Christmas, so she and her mother had stayed home from church. The pageant was going to be tomorrow, Christmas Eve. Marcy's mother had been chosen to play the mother of Jesus. Her father was one of the kings. Todd was a shepherd boy. Marcy's name would be on the program, too, for helping with costumes. She could hardly wait to see how everybody looked. Probably the most beautiful costumes of all the herald angels. It was white and so heavenly. Marcy had helped to make it. She wondered if she would ever get to be the herald angel. This year, the part had gone to Dorothy Cooper. Dorothy was a senior. She had an irritating manner and crooked teeth, but she could play the trumpet, so she was ideal for the part. Her trumpet could lead the carol singing. Marcy sighed. About the only thing I'd be ideal for is a plain, ordinary little girl, but of course there's no role for that. As though reading her mind, her mother said, Todd, Marcy and I were wondering why no little girls are ever shown in a manger scene in the Christmas scenes. Why do you suppose that is? Because it's a man's world. That's why, Todd said cheerfully, and he tramped away whistling. Furious, Marcy wanted to yell after him, It is not! It's a girl's world! But underneath, she had her doubts. Sometimes it seemed to her that boys had the best of everything, and not just at Christmas either. Todd could run faster than she could, skate better, climb trees higher. He was allowed to stay out after dark and play rough games. When he tore his clothes or got them dirty, people said approvingly he was a real boy. But when she acted wild, she was scolded for being unladylike. Kevin couldn't do much, of course, but he certainly got away with a lot. No one minded that he had terrible manners, and everybody waited on him, and people thought he was so cute, adorable, for no better reason that he had red hair and only 2 teeth and dimples. In her heart, Marcy feared that she herself was not cute at all. She could see herself right now reflected in the pane of the kitchen window, just a usual kind of little girl with long brown pigtails and a freckled nose. She was in between, nobody special. She pushed the last of the potato into Kevin's reluctant mouth, washed his plate and spoon, and went back to sit by the fire. She curled up on the rug, one arm under her head, and gazed into the warm orange and yellow flames. She imagined it was nearly 2,000 years ago and that she lived in a little town called Bethlehem near Judea. She was the daughter of a shepherd. One night she went out with her father to help tend the sheep. As they watched on the dark fields, a mysterious light appeared in the sky and grew brighter and brighter still. Then they saw it was an angel, a real, actual angel coming to speak to them. They were terrified. They thought it might be the end of the world. But the angel said, Don't be afraid. I've come to tell you a Savior's been born. He is Christ the Lord. You'll find him wrapped in swaddling clothes, lying in a manger. Then the angel pointed the way to where the Christ child was, and a brilliant star shone in the east to guide anyone who wanted to visit him. Marcy cried out to her shepherd father, Oh, please, I want to see the baby. Look, everybody's going. It was true. Following the glorious light, the other shepherds took up their crooks and walked toward the star, their faces full of wonder. Oh, I don't know, her father said doubtfully. It is his birthday, and I'd like to take a present to the child. I suppose I could take a baby lamb for him to play with, but you, Marcy, what could you take? I could make cookies. They're always good to have when you've got company coming. She and her father hurried home. Marcy baked cookies and wrapped them in gold paper. They sent out to join the other shepherds and follow the star. As they walked across the silvery, light-struck fields, a sense of miracle was upon them all. The sound of the wind was like a rush of angels, and the very trees seemed to whisper with the voices and promises of angels. Soon the star led them to a stable. Marcy was about to step inside when, Marcy, set the table, her mother called from the kitchen. She jumped at the sound of her name, and the daydream faded away. Late that afternoon, the whole family went to the pageant's last rehearsal. Marcy carried Kevin and promised to mind him and take him home if he fussed. She waited with the baby in the church while the rest of the family went off to change into their costumes. She looked around the church, her brown eyes wide. It was covered with red and green poinsettias, pine branches, with red ribbons decorated the choir stalls, and everything smelled like pine, like candles, like Christmas. For some reason she couldn't understand, Marcy's throat closed up. She felt like crying. Kevin complained, squirming in her lap. She hummed Jingle Bells to soothe him, and he quieted down a little. Across the aisle, not far from where Marcy was sitting, a nativity scene had been set up. She looked at the small wooden figures with familiar annoyance. No little girl anywhere. There was plenty of room for one more. Cookies might have come in very handy. Kevin began to whimper again. Marcy wished everyone would hurry up and get their costumes on. The baby was getting fussier by the moment. Hey, cheer up, she urged, but he whimpered all the more, and finally he began to cry. She realized she would have to take him home. Once he got in a bad mood, he didn't come out of it too easy. Oh, well, there's always tomorrow. Anyway, it might be better to see the pageant all at once when it was perfect. The baby was staying with a neighbor. She skipped home, jogging Kevin and singing lustily, "Dashing through the snow in a one-horse open sleigh." Overhead, the first stars of the evening blazed down. Next morning, Marcy woke up early, bursting with anticipation. It was Christmas Eve. She ran to the window. The day was brilliantly clear, and all the town seemed decorated for Christmas. The giant fir tree out front glittered with its burden of snow. Glowing icicles hung from every roof, and the sill of every house. Whitened streets reflected the sun with a magical brightness. The hours of the day seemed to fly by. They were last-minute presents to wrap, popcorn balls to make, celery and onions to be chopped for stuffing. In the afternoon, Marcy and her mother wrapped one of Marcy's favorite dolls in swaddling clothes. The doll was to be the baby Jesus in the pageant. Marcy felt very proud that her beloved doll was to be used. She washed the doll's face carefully after it was dressed to make sure it looked its best. Everyone's eyes were bright with excitement, but Marcy's most of all. She raced upstairs and changed into a red velvet dress and tied red ribbons on her pigtails. Then she went to Kevin's crib to dress him in his snowsuit. But suddenly noticed he looked strange. He had some bumpy spots on his face, and he was unusually hot to the touch. Alarmed, Marcy called her parents. Her mother took one look at the baby and groaned, "Oh, chicken pox." "Oh, I'm afraid so," Marcy's father agreed after a moment. Marcy remembered when she and Todd had chicken pox. Yep, they had looked the way Kevin looked now. Her mother phoned Mrs. Carter, the neighbor who planned to take care of Kevin. She explained about the chicken pox and asked if Miss Carter's 3 small children had had it. The answer was no. Mrs. Carter was awfully sorry, but of course she couldn't, under the circumstances, take Kevin. Her mother called 2 more neighbors to babysit, but without success. "We've got to get somebody. We're already late. What are they going to do if we don't show up? What good is a Christmas pageant without baby Jesus, his mother, a king, and a shepherd?" Marcy swallowed hard. It was true the whole pageant would be ruined without her mother and father and brother. But she thought there was one person who would not be missed, who in fact was always missing, a plain, ordinary little girl with no place at the manger. Still, it was hard to say the words. Marcy's voice sounded husky as she volunteered, "I'll stay with Kevin." Her mother protested, No, I know how much you've been looking forward to the pageant. There must be something else we can do." But they all knew time had run out. Marcy held back tears until after her family had hurried off to the pageant. And she flung herself across her bed and sobbed. She'd imagined just how it would be, her mother so beautiful in a blue robe, her father every inch a king in scarlet and gold, Todd the handsomest of the shepherds. She pictured the angels, her doll as baby Jesus. She wouldn't see any of it. She was going to miss it all. There was to be a short procession first around the outside of the church, with everyone singing and Dorothy playing. Marcy heard the music start. She ran to the window. She couldn't see the church, but she could hear the singing better with the window open. "Silent night, holy night." Even from this distance, Dorothy's trumpet sounded strong and fine. So did the voices. "All is calm, all is bright." through the ache of her disappointment. The words touched Marcy's heart. It was a calm and bright night. She loved carols, and she hummed along as verse after verse followed. Then the trumpet took on a summoning note. Dun, da, da. The tune changed to Marcy's favorite. Oh, come, all ye faithful. I wanted to, Marcy whispered. I couldn't, that's all. Something seemed to answer, a memory right at the edge of her mind. At first she couldn't quite catch hold of it. Then she remembered. It was what the leader of their church had said to their mother last year when they had to stay home. All at once she heard his words as clearly as though he were speaking to her now. When you want to see the Christ child and duty keeps you home, wait in peace and faith, for he will surely come to you. Sing, choirs of angels, sing in exaltation, the voices chorused. Church bells began to peal. The procession was nearly over. Marcy shut the window. She could still hear the singing and the triumphant notes of the trumpet. For today and for always, the words. For suddenly she knew, in a crystal moment of understanding, why there were never any little girls at the manger. Girls were needed at home. They could not be spared. Kevin cried faintly. Marcy hurried to his crib, and in the frosty air the bells rang joy to all the little girls in the world. Well, I don't know about all that, about girls always being needed in the home, but I'm telling you, if you're needed at home, doesn't matter whether you're a girl or a boy, you're doing God's work for him, and God will always make up the difference to you. I know that if you miss out on anything for any reason because you're doing the right thing, there's nothing anyone can take from you, including your reputation, that God can't give back in handfuls. So don't be afraid. Do what needs to be done, and it will all come right. Merry Christmas.